that's what I'll need to use. Okay, so a little bit about Lyle Oberwise. As you can see in this photograph, he's a sergeant in the U.S. Army Signal Corps, and his theater of operation was the China-Burma India Theater, which is the patch that's right above his chevrons. Before he was in the U.S. Army, first of all, he came from Batavia, Illinois originally. He's not a native Milwaukeean. He moved to Milwaukee sometime in the late 20s. He graduated from Marquette University with an engineering degree, and that was in 1931. He had a short stint in the Civilian Conservation Corps and served that in Illinois. And then when he came back to Milwaukee, he got a job at a company called Millprint, and he worked in their shipping department. At no point during his, well, actually, maybe he used some of his engineering degree later at his job at GE. But at Millprint, he didn't use his engineering degree at all. And we think that the job afforded him the opportunity to concentrate on his photography work. And it also gave him a great platform because he would go to the top of the Millprint building and take photographs. And those are some of our best ones. He remained at his job at GE, which he got in the 50s. For the rest of his life. He died in September of 1993, and he had a camera with him. He took a camera everywhere he went. We don't know a lot about him personally because there were a few interviews done with some of his friends, and what we could determine is that he was a very even-tempered man, a non-smoker. He really didn't imbibe in alcohol very much. And he's been described as a practicing Roman Catholic. The more I've delved into his photographs, the more he's become more of a complex character. I think his initial personality was sort of manufactured at the time because there was so little known about him. But by analyzing his photos, especially his black and white material, I've come to see that he certainly was not a meek person because he managed to place himself right in the middle of many events. So he wasn't afraid to get into things. And he wasn't really, he had no preconceived ideas about any of the images that he photographed. For example, because of Lyle Oberwise, we have the only LGBT photos really that we have in our collection because he would attend events at Brady Street and he would attend the Pride Fest. So he was more of a complex person than he's been described. This is a shot that he took in the CCC, and I recently found out that there is a scrapbook at the Broward County, Florida Historical Society that somebody donated, and it's a Lyle Oberwise scrapbook, and it's of all his buddies in the CCC. How it got to Florida, I don't know, but it's really pretty cool. And I think I'll post that link on Facebook today afterwards just to see, let everybody see. Okay, there we go. This is Agnes Goodrich. Lyle and Agnes were married in 1939. We don't really know a lot about her either. She was a librarian at the Milwaukee Public Library Central branch. Many of her friends were in Lyle's photographs. And they had a rather active social life in their early years, and again, a lot of her friends appear, but she was really, I think, quite a support to him. They didn't have children, so I think photography was their child, and she certainly helped him out in doing that. He couldn't have done it without her. So these are some of the early black and white photographs, and this is something when I got to the society had not really been explored very much. And I've been doing that since I arrived here. And we have scrapbooks that he made, and then we have a lot of individual shots in black and white. And really, in my view, it's some of his best work as well. For example, so he would immerse himself in any type of activity or event that was going on in Milwaukee County. And by the time he was, doing these black and white photos, he was already a very accomplished amateur. These black and white photographs, they chronicle the streets of downtown, local events, entertainment, entertainers, a lot of vaudeville and burlesque theater, locomotives, fires, construction, demolition, and of course, female figures and figures in general at the lakefront. It's no exaggeration to say that we have hundreds, if not thousands, of black and white photographs by him. The image on the left is from the American Legion parade, and this was an event that happened, well, it was actually a weekend event in September of 1941, and the American Legion held their national convention here, and it was quite a big deal. It closed Milwaukee down for 3 days. Pictures I've seen of the event, I at first thought it was either a photograph of the end of World War II VJ Day or the Braves, because Wisconsin Avenue is closed down, but I knew by the photographs, because all these floats were from each different VFW post, that it was in fact this event. The one on the right is from an event known as the Dairy Parade, and that the event began in 1937. It ran through downtown on Wisconsin Avenue to 68th Street through Tosa to 68th, and then to the State Fair Park. And these floats were designed and built by different companies or individualities. We could see individuals. We could see that this is the Southeastern Wisconsin Cheese Association. So they have their big cheese wagon coming down Wisconsin Avenue, and the woman inside was the entry into the Allison Dairyland event where they would pick the State Fair Queen. Let's move on. And this is really one of my absolute favorite shots. This is a view from the Ferris wheel during State Fair, and we're looking north in the distance. Let me see if my cursor works. That is the old County General Hospital, which is very prominent from the top of this Ferris wheel. And this particular water tower is still in use in Wauwatosa. 84th Street is somewhere in here. It's just a great shot. And he did one from the other direction as well. He went to State Fair at least every 3 to 5 years. And we have a fantastic collection of his State Fair photographs. And because of that, we pretty much know what were the events at State Fair for particular years. Oops, sorry about that. This came from a Facebook post that I did a while back. And this is a case where, for the most part, we can really, Lyle's information is reliable, what he wrote, but I think in this particular case, he developed them and then wrote them later or got his notes mixed up, because the photograph on the left, Downer College, is not the State Normal School. That is Shorewood High School. The more egregious error is on the right. He labeled Whitefish Bay High School Shorewood High School, and when I posted this on Facebook, I never realized there was such a bitter rivalry between Whitefish Bay and Shorewood, but I certainly found out that day. So we can, although we can trust most of the information on his photos, we still have to verify some of it. And this is what I call the old figure comparisons. And Oberwise did hundreds of these. And basically what he did was he would go to the lakefront. In this case, he's on the government pier, and he would take pictures of people. Sometimes they were aware they were being photographed. Sometimes they were not. Often they were women. And we think that he may have, or, also couples, he may have supplemented his income at the time by offering these photos for sale to people later. That's a little bit of speculation, but I think by you'll see at the end by the camera that he has, and it's in his jacket, so it's kind of strange looking. But the one thing about his figure comparisons, especially on the lakefront, is what's in the background. So here we can see, St. Mary's, and oops, I don't know why it did that. Let me go back. Jolie, now my computer has a mind of its own. So we could see, St. Mary's, we can see the pumping station down here. So his photographs, although he wasn't trying to necessarily capture an image, in the background, there's a lot, and that's especially true in these. So now let's go to the next one. So he did do professional work. First of all, he was the official photographer for Millprint. So anytime Millprint had an event, they would use Lyle for their picnics. He also did portraits of some of their employees, and he was probably just it's a cheaper way to get a picture taken than to go to a studio. And he also took some photographs of employees that almost looked like it was some type of identification card. So he has a lot of that. But in this particular case, he took a photograph of Milan's Rustic Garden bowling team, and he did modeling portfolios. We have a lot of those, and he did some product placement. So he would like a can of beans or something like that. So we do have that. So there was certainly an element of professional work that he did. All right, moving along. And this one, I think of the Twilight Zone every time I see this. This is the Oberwise Zone, but he was very experimentative, more so than his contemporaries like Ray Chopre. Ray Chopre was also a fantastic Milwaukee photographer. A little later, but I think they were of the same generation. Chopre was, I think, younger than Oberwise, but Chopre, while his photographs are great, he is strictly meat and potatoes. He is not doing all kinds of things, but Oberwise was very interested in these multiple exposure films. Photographs, and he was also drawn to iconic images. So we see like the Schlitz sign, we see the Jesse James, Carpenters, all these really interesting images, and iconography and advertising has always been something that has been a source of interest to him. All right, so briefly, we'll do a little bit about China, Burma, and India. And this is he was there from 1944 to 1945. This, as it says, this is a picture of Shanghai. And again, most of his Shanghai pictures, and they're absolutely stunning, have this element of iconography. So we could see the Chinese characters on the buildings, but the nationalist Kuomintang flag is really quite prominent in this. And this next one is really an amazing photograph. So there are a lot of Signal Corps photos of this particular place. And this was the Jewish ghetto in Shanghai. And this is the only one that I've seen that's been in color. And again, the flags and all of that. And you may ask yourself, what was a Jewish ghetto doing in Shanghai? Shanghai had a large population of Russian expats from the Bolshevik Revolution. And they had a lot of Germans who were some of the last to leave Nazi Germany in the late 30s. Shanghai was an open port, so you didn't need papers to get in. So this was a place of refuge for a long time for Ashkenazi Jews from Europe. When World War II started, the Japanese were far less enthusiastic about Hitler's obsession with the Jews, but to placate their Axis ally, they did create an area in Shanghai where Jews and probably other politically suspect people of Shanghai Shuk's government, and they were numerous, may also have been held there. But this is just it's a one of a kind photograph. The Jewish Museum in Vienna purchased a copy of this to use in their exposition about Jewish Shanghai. Let's get to the next one. Okay, street scenes. Here we go. This is really, these are the exciting ones. So this is a view in 1963, early 60s at least. We know that it's probably 62 or 63. The Republican House Hotel is no longer visible behind the First Wisconsin Second Ward Bank. And incidentally, that's my office right there, best office in the city. But we could see it was a very different landscape downtown. No Hyatt, the courthouse in the distance is just looming. And we see the Second Ward Bank. We see Plankinton Avenue with a street car trolley track still in the middle. But what's interesting is that this is pre-Pierre Marquette Park. So at this time, there would have been buildings across Plankinton from the Historical Society all along this block, which accounts for the Historical Society's strange triangular shape because it was literally surrounded by concrete. So this is, quite a while back. We do have this image in one of our view walkies, which is literally the same view of this particular picture. These are two really great shots of downtown. On the left is a view of Wisconsin Avenue looking east. The Blatz building is just beautiful, and this is pre-removal of the domed top. We can see the Red Room Bar, the Empire Building with the Riverside, the Posner Building. This, with the exception of the Blatz building, is fairly unchanged, except for the stores and things. You can see the real hustle and bustle of downtown Milwaukee at that time, a streetcar coming at us. And the one on the left is, we're looking west, and we feel this is from 1948. The previous one would have been from 1946. But again, like iconic images, the Gimbels building, you can see that they are disassembling the top of the Blatz building in this particular one. You can see the Mariner building, or what is now the Wisconsin Center building. I forget what it's called. But again, this is just a great view of the city. And this is really what he's most known for, although he's, so much more. This is one of his particularly favorite spots. So this is a view of Wisconsin Avenue looking east from North 11th Street in 1946. The First Methodist Church is on the far left of the picture. That was demolished when the expressway was built. We can see the dome of the public library. In the trees are kind of covering where the Wisconsin Club would be. Again, the Mariner building, and the treat area on the right would have been Red Arrow Park at that time. Let me go to here. And again, from his favorite spot, this was a shot during the holiday season. That's the community tree. It looks like a tree, but it was actually a structure that was built from wood and then parts of trees were put into it to make it look like one complete tree. The fact is, the technology to haul big trees like that just wasn't there yet. So they use this method to create it. And you can see the library in the background. I think I'm speculating here, but I mean, he went to Marquette High School, so I mean Marquette University. So I think he was in this area a lot, and I think he was particularly drawn to it for his images. And here's another one. This is, of course, the Great Blizzard of 1947. It really gives us a good view of, how overwhelming that event must have been. Again, the Methodist Church, the same views. All I know about the 47 blizzard is anytime we got off of school because the snow was bad, my parents would go, "Oh, this is nothing compared to the 47 blizzard." That's all. It must have been bad. This is a great shot too. And this is looking over, there's a fly right there. This is looking, this would be, what do we want to say, southwest, but it's a great view of the city. You can see City Hall, some of the other prominent buildings downtown, but this is the Holton Street Viaduct. And this viaduct was built in 1926, and it did open because at this time, ships were coming up this far, especially to go to Galoon Tannery, which would have been, it's out of the picture to the left, but you can see this area of what is now apartments and often referred to as the Beer Line neighborhood. Really wasn't a neighborhood at all. It was a very heavily industrialized area, huge piles of coal. In the background here is where Lakefront Brewery is now. So a radically different view of the area. And this is one of my favorite photographs. I call it the Ice Cream Girls for obvious reasons. We believe this is Walnut Street. This is definitely Bronzeville. And this is Oberwise at his best at capturing people candidly. And we can see the girl on the left and the two girls on the left are obviously looking at something going on in that direction. The first girl on the right, who seems to be in like a ballerina pose or something, is having some kind of issue with her ice cream. But the far right woman is looking at Oberwise, and I can only imagine what she's thinking. But this is just a beautiful image, and when he had a real knack for capturing people. And we even see that in his Shanghai photos because he did a lot of that as well. This is a shot from the 70s, I think about 1976 or 77, the Suburbia sub shop wagon, the double-decker bus. I'm often wondering if this isn't like the seed of food trucks in the food truck business, but this went all the way around. This one is on Brady Street. And this is just the kind of thing, he was walking on Brady Street, this caught his eye, he took the picture. Churches, clubs, and public buildings. So this one everybody should recognize, City Hall. He did a lot of great photographs downtown. We can still see the trolley lines in the middle, and City Hall. It says the City Hall letters, which by the way we have. It says in memoriam, but we don't really know what it is, other than that it's 10:25 in the morning. But again, a great shot. These are two churches that both had the same final ending. The one on the left is, of course, Our Lady of Pompeii, which was the religious center for the Italian community of the Third Ward. This shot was taken in 1959, and you can see that there's already a lot of demolition going on in preparation for the expressway. A lot of this area was considered by the city of Milwaukee as blighted, meaning it was in need of being torn down. That is a very debatable term because there was a real incentive to build the freeway that may have blinded the planners to areas that may have looked old, but were not necessarily blighted. And this was indeed a very active neighborhood. The picture on the right is that is the St. Jacoby's Evangelical Lutheran Church. It's kind of the anchor on the end of the Mitchell Street Business District. It was a church until about the late 1960s. The parish simply grew too large for this building in this area. So they moved to Greenfield. In fact, they're very close to Trimborn Farm in that area. It's on 84th Street. And they attempted to sell the church, and they didn't have any buyers. It went up for sale in 69, and it was demolished in 74 because nobody was really interested in it. And you can see, I believe that's St. Vincent de Paul in the background. Mitchell Street has so many beautiful churches. This is the Jewish Community Center when it was being built. This is circa 1955. It was designed by a Milwaukee architect. His name was Maynard W. Meyer, but it's, it really captures that early shot. It's more modern architecture, and this would have been where the large Prospect Avenue mansions would have been. A lot of those were they were in disrepair because the families had moved out and they were boarding houses and whatnot. So they were cleared for what we now that area on Prospect that has all the apartments. These are two buildings that you should recognize. On the left is the Old South Division High School at 13th and Lapham. It was built in 1898. It was expanded 3 different times. The dome was removed in 1978 when this building was torn down for the new South Division, but the dome itself is still available for viewing at Blumel's Landscaping on, gosh, what is that street? It's, oh, I should know this. It's right by my house. I'll think of it. But they have a tea room, and it's amazing, how big this is in real life. I mean, it looks big there, but when you see it that close, it's amazing. It's on Loomis Road. So, and then the building on the right, we still know this is a very interesting picture, and it's a good time to talk about Cream City Brick because this is of course Turner Hall, and they have the nice Turner sign there. This is about 1948. But the brick is incredibly dirty, and that was one of the problems with cream, or not a problem, but one of the side effects of using Cream City Brick is that it was such a soft brick. It was very absorbent, and it would absorb smog, and there was certainly a lot of coal, dust, and smog in Milwaukee at the time. You'll note the little flower boxes there. That's kind of a nice touch. And this is the auditorium, which was built in. This photo is from 1949. It was built in 1904 to replace the exposition center. I think the reason that Oberwise took this photo is he may have been drawn to the popcorn wagon, but you'll see that it says Sentinel Sports Show. And I believe he was going to the Sentinel Sports Show because we have a lot of photographs from that particular event in his collection. Usually when I do the live talks, I ask people if they recognize this building, and it'll be kind of hard to do, but you can just make it out right here. That is St. Luke's Hospital in 1954. This is the original building, and of course that area has changed incredibly, but you can see just how open everything was. My understanding is that the new hospital buildings surround this. This building is still there, but it's basically surrounded by the newer buildings. But a really interesting view of the of the hospital. There, come on now. There we go. This is the old public natatorium. This is the one that was on 4th Street, and the shop was taken about 1980. It had already been converted to the restaurant. I was never personally there, but I remember hearing about it. It was a restaurant that had dolphins swimming around in it. The interesting thing is this one was built in 1910. And it's one of 7 that were built between 1888 and 1917. And this is one of the socialist, Milwaukee socialist government's ideas. They were very, very concerned about public health. And the building of these natatoriums gave people an opportunity to swim, but also to shower. So personal hygiene was something that the socialists felt always could be improved upon. And these structures are an example of that. Parks and Rec. My mom could actually be in this picture. This is Washington Park, about 1949. So this is the area around the Washington Park Lagoon. Originally, it was called West Park, and it was designed by Frederick Law Olmsted, the park that is. He was a landscape architect in Central Park, and some of the other parks in the Lake Park were part of his imprint on Milwaukee. Unfortunately, this boathouse was demolished in 1977. This is the old Milwaukee Brewers board shirt field. We think this photograph was taken maybe in the last year, possibly 1951. The stadium, of course, became obsolete when the Braves came to Milwaukee and the original county stadium was built. But it really gives you a good idea of what a ballpark in a city looks like. We think of Wrigley Field, so Milwaukee had its own little one. This a lot of times it's stated that the expressway went through and that's why it was torn down. The expressway does impact this footprint, but the Borchard Field was actually torn down right after the Brewers started playing. So like 50, 52, it was already gone because they didn't really need it. And then here, of course, is a shot of Milwaukee County Stadium, with the National League 1958 champion pennant up there. So it's a really good shot. Again, I think Oberwise was kind of drawn to the iconography of the Braves team mascot or symbol, and the Native American, the teepee up on top. Those kind of things always attracted him. And this one is fairly close, familiar shot. This is River Splash. This is from 1987. This is the beginning of the idea to engage with the Milwaukee River. By this time, it had already been decided that it was kind of a very useless kind of commercial artery, and it needed to be re-envisioned. So through a series of studies, it was decided to begin to place areas by the river where people could gather. So you can see our building is out of the picture to the left, but you can see that Pierre Marquette Park is there, and Pierre Marquette Park right across at the what was then the Performing Arts Center, and then farther down by Gimbel's by Wisconsin Avenue became kind of the core of the of the Riverwalk area, and the Riverwalk district was designated in 1992, and from that point on have completed the system that we have now. But this is just an event. These are some very brave individuals being in the river in 1987. But again, commercial traffic this far up north had ended. And this one is just amazing. This is the old Summerfest grounds. It's also a good kind of view of Milwaukee in the background. You can see again the St. Mary's complex. This is where Discovery World, and of course missing is the Calatrava. But I remember this old stage, and this is a shot, I believe, from 1980. It looks like a much quaint's not really the word, but it certainly is a much smaller venue than the Summerfest, the Henry Meyer Festival Park that we now know. Commercial buildings. This is just a hugely iconic shot of Gimbel Schuster's. Sorry, I'm jumping ahead a little bit. This is North 3rd, looking north. So it is now Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Drive, but there is the Schuster's building. The building next to it seems to be undergoing some kind of repairs, but this was, one of the major shopping districts besides downtown. So it was Mitchell Street, and then North 3rd, and there were others too, Valete Street, but they all had these smaller shopping areas. And this predates, technically Schuster's was a department store, but this predates the really big stores and the malls that we are now familiar with. This, I believe, is the Rosenberg building in the background. So that's the corner of North Avenue and 3rd. You can see the excuse me, trolleys have already become electric wheeled buses. This is the Sears and Roebuck store on the corner of Fond du Lac, 20th and North. It's at a really kind of complex intersection. It was taken. This photograph was taken in 1949. The store opened in 1927, and I personally went to this store because until Northridge was built, this was the Sears that my parents went to. So I have some very vivid memories of the inside of the building. And later, as an electrician in the 80s, I ended up working inside when it was converted to kind of a marketplace. And it's quite an interesting building to be in. It's a great photograph. Here we have Bayshore in its infancy. This is, this is when it opened in 1954. It was one of the first strip malls in Wisconsin. It was anchored by a Sears store, and that was probably about it. I understand this used to be it was more of a rural area, or sort of rural. There was a strawberry patch and also a dump. I mean, it certainly has come a long way, and it certainly looks nothing like the current town center that is there. This is one of my favorite shots. So this is the Gimbels. This is from 1954. It's at Southgate Mall. Southgate and Bayshore kind of represented a shift away from the satellite downtowns like 3rd and North, and Mitchell Street. They were built in like newly developed post-war neighborhoods and suburbs, and the boom in auto sales really allowed people to, even if they didn't live by it, to travel and have access to these malls, which made them, very viable. It was kind of a sea change in consumer use of shopping centers and buildings and stores. So this is a shot of two of the breweries. But amazingly, his photo collections of the breweries aren't as big as you'd think. So he did do shots, and the one on the left is Schlitz, and it's a beautiful shot. We're looking down Galena toward the river. The brown bottle would be kind of around the corner down here, but it's a really good shot of the Schlitz brewery facility. And then of course on the right is Pabst Blue Ribbon. And both of these met their end in the 1980s. Schlitz first after a strike, and then Pabst. In the 80s, 90s, was bought by a California firm and then closed in 1996. Both of the buildings have been reused, but they're brewing. The days of the glory of brewing are certainly gone. And this one, I don't know, a lot of people may remember this. As I said, I was an electrician. I was working downtown, and this is in the early 80s. And the the two things I remember the most were the smell of ambrosia chocolate and beer malt. It was quite an interesting place. So this is the ambrosia chocolate factory. This ambrosia started in 1894, and it was a downtown fixture until it moved to the northwest side of town in 1992. It was located on Fifth Street, and this area was all incorporated into the first the Bradley Center, and now the area around Fiserv Forum. And again, my office. This is the first Wisconsin National Bank, Second Ward. It was initially known as the Second Ward Savings Bank, and that was a bank that was it was known locally as the Brewers Bank, because a lot of the principals were in the brewing industry and served on the board. So if you'll recall, the first picture that we had of this building from a different angle, I had mentioned the Republican Hotel. Well, you can see it looming in the background here. It's this beautiful German Gothic building. It had been white too. I've seen it as a white building, but here it's rather brown and dreary. But again, just a fantastic building. I'd much rather see that than the Journal parking lot that's there now. But what's really cool about this picture is it gives you a good view down Plankington. So Plankington connected with Third before State Street, and then went over to State Street. So these buildings are gone. All of the the structures to the right would be gone. So this is a really cool picture of how it used to be, and I'm fascinated by that former landscapes, and Oberwise does a great job of cataloging, chronicling those. The building my dad referred to as the hippie building. This is the Sydney High building. It was the West Side Bank, and it was the Sens block for Nicholas Sens block originally. It's a very old building. Nicholas Sens was a well-known doctor in Milwaukee, and this was the building that he worked out of. As I said, it later became the West Side Bank, and then in 1972. Or in the 70s, it was bought, and this paint job went on in 1972. Unfortunately, this one did not survive the building of the Fiserv Forum. It was razed in 2012, much to the chagrin of preservationists. Neon signs were a big part of his work. He did a lot of them. He would go down the different streets, like Third and of course downtown and Mitchell Street as well. But these are two images of the many. So on the left is the Dreamland arcade dancing ballroom. It was on North Avenue, about 1801, so North Third. I think that might be like Third and Brown, but the building is still there. You can see the marquee, that the round part is still visible, so the building is still up. The building, or the sign on the right, is the old Howard Johnson's logo, the Simple Simon logo, which I haven't seen for a while. This is the Howard Johnson's by Southgate. And the sign, this photograph was taken in 1968. By this time, Southgate was, although it was still a thriving apartment or a mall would soon be overshadowed by Southridge. And gradually, Southgate began to be less important. Still, to the people who live locally, it's legendary. But it was finally Southgate was finally demolished in 1999. And here's two more. This is Eugene Seafood in the Hotel Juno, which was very close to the Northwest, the Chicago and Northwestern Railroad Depot at the lakefront. It was considered the premier place to get seafood in Milwaukee. It later moved, I believe, to I'm not sure where it moved to. I thought it was either the Knickerbocker or I thought it was the Knickerbocker. I could be wrong about that. On the right, we see the Henry Calder Company, which is amazing that it was this small shop. And this is on Fond du Lac, just a little south and east of the Sears and Roebuck building that we previously saw. So I also have memories of this growing up as a kid. All right, let's move on to transportation. Oberwise was very passionate about trains. Milwaukee had two magnificent depots in the 19th and 20th century. This is the Chicago, Milwaukee, St. Paul Milwaukee, St. Paul, and Chicago, St. Paul, and Milwaukee Railroad Depot. And this was down Everett Street. So it's sometimes called Everett Street Station. Sometimes it's called the Milwaukee Road Depot, because that longer name later dropped Chicago and St. Paul and just became the Milwaukee Road. So this is one of their famous Hiawatha build locomotives departing the station. The station itself is interesting because when people who don't know the history of the city and the layout and everything, they think it's a church, and it really does look like a church. It's a beautiful, again, kind of German Gothic structure. Unfortunately, the tower was severely cropped off, like right about here. That part was gone. There was a fire, and it was not repaired. That was in 1951. The tower was removed, and it was ultimately torn down in 1965. There was the new intermodal station, which is now the intermodal station, was built. And the freeway is right up against this particular footprint now. So we're moving a little further down. Okay, so here we have the Chicago and Northwestern Depot, which was at the lakefront. This was built in 1889, and it had a hotel, restaurant, waiting rooms, offices, and it was quite the busy terminal. You can see here's the shelter for the passengers. What's really interesting too in this shot is we can see Maitland Field, and this is from 1948. So this would have been pre-Nike missile, but this Maitland Field was eventually turned into a Nike missile base. But this really shows you how different the lakefront looked, and here you can see in the background the Milwaukee Coke and Solvay company's works. So much more industrial look, and this is just a fascinating shot, and fascinating to me. If I were to go back in time, I would take this route. It's a strange combination of amusement park, thrill ride, and public transportation, because this was the old 58 line that would go from Wells Street downtown to I'm sorry, it's the number 10 line that would go from downtown to either Tosa or West Allis, but it had to cross this trellis bridge that was across Miller Valley. You could see Miller in the background there with the Lady in the Moon sign, and it was two ways. So the cars could come at each other. Obviously the railroad or the trolleys went out. Last one ran in 1958, and shortly after the bridge was disassembled. And probably one of the more iconic images locally, certainly, are these Wadhams gas stations. They were designed by Alexander Eschweiler, and he was challenged to come up with a unique design for the gas stations, and he came up with this kind of quasi-oriental look, and it stuck. So there were many of them. Built, at least 40 in our area. This one was on the corner of 27th and Wisconsin, and it was the largest. It was tall, and it was much longer. The other ones are much shorter footprints. But there is still one that exists. It's on South 76th and West National in West Dallas. So you can kind of, get a view of what it looks like if you're in that particular area. Now, demolition. The picture on the left is the Elizabeth Plankinton home. It was on 15th in Wisconsin. The story is it was built by Edward Townsend Mix for Elizabeth's wedding. It was built by her father, and the wedding didn't go through. She walked in and walked out and never lived there. And for a long time, it was the Catholic Knights building. Marquette decided that they needed that space. And this is one of the things where if I post this on Facebook, there's always a lot of acrimony and bitterness. Marquette was less than upright about how it tore the building down. There was supposed to be a stop work order issued at midnight at midnight, and Marquette went in before midnight in the dark and demoed it. So it's really a sad thing. And this was another kick to preservationists to really work harder. The building on the right is the Benjamin House. This was known as the Benjamin Castle. It was on North Prospect. It was right next to the Conservatory of Music, so about 1570. This is about circa 1963 and 64. Oberwise really did a good job of chronicling this tear down of these buildings, and then the construction of the new high-rise hotels. And then this, of course, is the granddaddy of all demolitions. And again, another one that is bitterly contested is the Chicago Northwestern Railroad Depot, which was torn down in 1968. This really was the start of a serious historic preservation movement in Milwaukee. And this, to this day, the fact that it was torn down is still lamented. In the background, we can see the Elks building, which followed shortly after in the 1970 or 71, it was torn down. And there, of course, we see the Prospect Apartments and the Prospect Tower. And with that, I thank you for your attention. I'd like you to look at this photograph. His suit, there is something funky going on here with this suit, and I'm not sure why. And I think that's where he may have had some type of camera apparatus where he took these pictures of people. But again, government pier, so we can see what the Milwaukee lakefront area looked like. So it's even pictures like this where he wasn't really capturing the background, we can glean things from it. And he said, it says yours truly, which is what he used to call himself in any photographs that were taken. My screen went blank. Is this the time where we answer questions? If there are any, I would prefer if you guys would turn on your mics and ask me. I'm horrible at typing. I was an electrician for a long time, never really learned how to type correctly. So it'd be easier to just answer if you have any questions.
Yeah, so if you have a question, either maybe raise your hand or type it in and Steve can read it and answer it, or
Okay, sure.
you can unmute yourself and ask a question. Anybody? Well, I'll start. Why is the Milwaukee County Historical Society's building back then so dark?
Well, because of, smog and coal dust, it's been cleaned. That's it. I mean, the amount of coal burned in Milwaukee when it was a heat source was incredible. And Milwaukee, as far as like coal production and coke production for the steel industry, Milwaukee was one of the leading cities for that process. So that's pollution you're looking at, and obviously we learned to clean it. The thing with the Cream City brick, though, is that it's a chemical washing process. They're difficult to sandblast because the brick is so soft that you could literally blow a hole through the brick or blow out chunks of it. So it's a time consuming, rather expensive process.
When did they clean it?
Well, our building? Oh, I really, I couldn't tell you. I would think it got cleaned after it became Historical Society in 1965. I would have to do a study and go back and look at pictures of it through the years. But I'm sure it was done as part of the renovation when it went from bank to museum, which again was in 1965.
Okay. Does anybody have any questions?
Has anybody ever seen the Oberwise collections? Did you guys see any of the exhibits that Angelos and Johnson were the two individuals who found the collection, and they did a good job of making it available to the public. So a lot of the images have been seen. The thing is, they had certain images they selected, and they were a good selection. There were probably, I want to say, at least 150 photographs that were framed. But his work is so incredibly large and expansive that that's just a slice of what he really does.
Samara has a question. When the buildings were torn down, were elements in general saved, the depot, Plankington House, etc., or was it all demoed to the point of fill?
I'm sure that architectural features were sold to companies that resell them. I do believe the city of Milwaukee at one time had parts of some of the buildings that were torn down. They tended to be more municipal buildings, but there's a very large market for architectural resale, and I'm sure that's what happened to a lot of it. I know that Cream City brick is saved and refurbished. That's still because it's not made anymore, so that's still a very marketable item. And then just like all the decorative elements, globes and things like that, gargoyles are saved, and there are collectors who collect that. I know a few people that they'll buy pieces of buildings. So I don't think it was all disposed of. I think a lot of it was sold.
Good question, Mara. Anybody else? Well, I have another question.
Sure.
The bottom gas stations, are there any of those left or any of those buildings left?
Yeah, and as I said, there's one on South 76th and West National and West Dallas, and that is still preserved as a gas station. So it's more of a museum. There is one in Cedarburg, but that has been converted into a private business. I haven't been to Cedarburg in a while, so I don't know what's there, but I think it's on Columbia. So there is that one too. So if you're in Cedarburg, they're hard to miss because
Yeah.
so I know there's one there.
Well, it doesn't look like we have any more questions, but people are still here. So thank you, Steve. Thank you for your time today. It was a great presentation. I learned a lot. But we do want to let everybody know that we will have another Lunch and Learn in November. Topic has yet to be determined, but you can watch for that on our social media and our website at www.milwaukeehistory.net. Thanks so much for attending. Thanks for supporting the Milwaukee County Historical Society, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you.